Hi everyone, I want to welcome you to what's going to be a bit of a sort of a tabletop discussion build tips video on the new NAMC North American MiG Consortium Su-27 Flanker. If you've already purchased the plans for this plane, thank you so much. We truly appreciate it and hope that you have lots and lots of fun building and flying this plane. Pardon me, if you're still in the process of doing some research, we hope that this video will help educate you or help you make an educated decision to buy the plane. This video will also be a bit of a complement to the build instructions, which will be available for you to browse through before you purchase the plane. So please check the comments below. There'll be links to where you can buy the plane, the instructions, our recommended parts list that talks about the components that we used when we tested this plane and on all of our planes. Also, there's going to be two threads on the RC Powers forum. One is the official thread where we will support the plane for people who have purchased the plans. The other thread has been around a little bit longer. It's called the NAMC Su-27 Flanker Design, Build, and Test thread. Our motto at NAMC is think, design, test, and validate. We've actually been thinking about doing an Su-27 for probably over 2 years. We wanted to capture the kind of the very first variant of the Su-27 that was developed back in the 70s and 80s, and I think that Stephane did an amazing job of capturing the size and scale of the Su-27. So in that time period, we did a lot of research, a lot of discussion back and forth, sort of what we wanted in the Su-27, and then in the last few months, Stephane really got busy in dialing in the actual design on the plans, and then we got going seriously with the testing through building Dollar Tree foam mock-ups and then flying prototypes. So you can go to that thread and sort of see the process that we went through from sort of the first set of plans that were ready to be built into a flying prototype, sort of the changes and modifications that we made, because this is not, this is actually the second close to final, or second prototype, which is quite a bit different than the first prototype. Also in that thread, we owe a debt of gratitude to a North American test team who came in at the end of the process to help us with validation on the plans, instructions, and of course the plane. So we owe a huge thanks to Carl, Eric, Peter, and Rocky, who pardon me, who have given us just an immense amount of help and objective points of view on again the plans, the build instructions, and the plane. So thanks very much for that. And you can go to that thread, the build, design, and test, or design, build, and test thread, and see some things there that they've posted about their flights and their builds. So lots of stuff there. Okay, so just quick and dirty on the specifications. The wingspan is 27 inches, or just gotta look at my cheat sheet here, 685-86 millimeters. From the tip of the nose to the booms back here, it's 39¼ inches long, just short of a meter, or 997 millimeters. With our recommended recommended components on our parts list, we recommend probably anywhere between 17 to 22, 23 ounces weight. This plane is at just over 21 ounces. With a 2200 3-cell battery. With the KF4s, I've got 6 servos, 9-gram servos on here, and it still flies really, really great. Tons of fun. This is just a standard 2212-6 2200 kV motor with a 6x4 APC prop, which is probably the most popular park jet power setup around. So you can have tons and tons of fun with it on just the very basic setup. At this weight, where I fly, probably 85 to 90% of the time, I'm flying in anywhere from 5 to 15 mile-an-hour winds. So at this weight, it'll handle just about any wind that I have to fly in. So depending on what environment you fly in. If you fly in a lot of wind, you know, KF4s, and at this weight, you should be just fine. Okay, foam required. This one is built, this airframe, other than the KF4 airfoils, which are made out of Adams Ready Board or Dollar Tree foam. This is made with MPF or model plane foam. So you'll need about, if you make your KFs out of dollar store foam, you'll need about a sheet and a third of the 24 by 48 inch model plane foam to build the plane. If you use MPF for everything, then you probably need about a sheet and a half. If you still build with Depron, based on the 27 inch by 39 inch sheets, or 700 millimeter by a meter, you'll need probably about a sheet, almost a sheet and a half. And again, that's using Dollar Tree foam for your KF airfoils. On my planes now that you know, I don't have a whole lot of the hobby grade Depron left that I still build with, so I did build one. I used model plane foam for the fuselage and the canopy, and Depron for everything else, and it only required one sheet of Depron and then about a quarter of a sheet of MPF for the fuselage. One of our test team members, Peter, a fellow countryman from Canada, he built his plane from Dollar Tree foam, or the Adams Ready Board. Again, on that design, build, and test thread, he shared some tips and techniques, and his plane flies just awesome, built out of Dollar Tree foam. And when I asked him, he said to have about 5 sheets of the 20 inch by 30 inch Dollar Tree foam available to build this plane. So it has been built out of those 3 types of foam and has flown very well and very successfully. Okay, bit unique. Our wing reinforcement plan is a bit unique. It's there's a one. Oops, I don't want to bend those up too bad. There's a spar that runs across here, and then sort of 2 legs that run down the wings. This spar, we recommend 4mm carbon rod because it's super strong, and these 2 legs, which you definitely will need even if you're building super light, otherwise your wing is going to flex like crazy and it'll affect your flight performance and possibly end up with a broken wing. If you can't get 4mm carbon rod, or you don't have any around and you just want to get the plane built, you can use the 3mm carbon tube for that 15-inch spar. You'll just want to make sure that your weight is definitely going to be below 22 ounces. You know, otherwise you may see some significant wing flex. Again, I built this with MPF. All these dimensions are on the plan, so because I wanted a little bit of extra rigidity, this is a 3mm carbon tube here. I think on the plans we recommend 13 inches long. For extra strength with the MPF and to keep the cost down, I just used short sections of bamboo skewer here, the barbecue bamboo skewer. I just picked those up at the dollar store for dirt cheap. So in the booms, elevons, and in the vertical stabilizer here, there's I think about a 7.5-inch chunk that goes all the way down into this ventral fin here on the bottom to keep that strong. If you are building with Depron or you know, good stiff foam like that, I would still recommend you, strongly recommend you put reinforcement in the booms here. If you're flying really aggressively, what happens sometimes is these can still, they can twist a little bit, and if you don't reinforce them, they can actually bind into each other, catch and bind into each other, and you know, it could end up with you losing your plane. So you don't want to do that. Okay, let me talk a little bit about setups. Go back and talk about setups a little bit. This obviously, I've got all the controls, ailerons, elevons, and rudders. This plane flies just great with elevons only. I've tested it quite a bit with elevons only. You'll need obviously more throw in the roll axis than if you had ailerons. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. I'll fire up the plane and show you the starting controls that we like to, the starting throws that we like to recommend. If you were just wanted to build it with 4 servos, I would actually recommend elevons and rudders. Then that way You know, if you watch videos of Su-27s at air shows, you know, they do some really cool and unique you know, flat spins and other maneuvers that, you know, really helps to have yaw control. Pardon me, if you want to be able to emulate those. So again, 4 servos, I'd probably go elevons only and rudders, and then you've got lots of versatility to have all kinds of fun. All right, so the push rods here, they look pretty long. These are homemade scratch build. I just make mine out of 2mm carbon rod. But if you, this is a Dubro 256 threaded metal push rod, you know, that is very popular. I know a lot of folks use these. So you'll want, if you have 4 brand new ones of these, 12 inches long, they'll be plenty long for the rudder and elevons. In fact, you may need to trim a little bit off, but you want to start with 4 of those. So if you need to pick up supplies to build this plane, that's something that you'll want. Our motor mount is a bit unique. You can see here the back of the electronics bay hatch slopes down quite a bit. So the top of the wooden motor mount is actually flat so that the electronics bay door can close. So we have templates for this on our plans. If you have a bunch of the RC Powers style motor mounts, essentially all you need to do is just cut about 1/4 of an inch off the top, and everything else, all the hole placements, the slots, everything else are exactly the same. So, you know, just a bit unique there. One thing we recommend in our build instructions is using, these are 3-inch extensions to go between the speed controller and the motor. I just get these from Hobby King. I, you know, buy a few of them at a time. You can also make your own. I think these are 15 centimeters or 3 inches long. You'll note, because this you know, it's pretty shallow in here, we tend to run our motor wires down underneath, underneath the wing plate. It helps if you connect these on to the motor and then thread these through here. Makes it a lot easier. And one of the key components to getting the max performance out of this plane is keeping everything very close to the center of gravity. You know, so that we've got a really tight moment of inertia here, tight center of mass. So by having the extension wires, I have everything set up in this battery bay right now for how I fly this plane. So I've got my speed controller a little bit further forward here, and that allows me to slide my battery back a little bit. The battery essentially is 1/3 of the entire weight of the plane. So the closer you can and tighter you can have that to the CG, the more easily the plane maneuvers around all 3 axes, and also the better balance you have. So by having this speed controller, which only weighs about 40 grams, a little further forward, it helps prevent having to have the battery too far forward and then having a tendency to, lengthening this moment of inertia and having a tendency for the plane to feel perhaps a little bit nose heavy. So again, we recommend those. Another unique build feature that we recommend on this plane is Stephane did an excellent job here. You can see these lurks, leading edge root extensions, curve down somewhat, and the curve of the nose as well. It actually provides not only does it provide very cool scale looks, but it provides a bit of a benefit in that this shape actually provides a little bit of extra lift. So it feels a little bit lighter on the sticks, lighter and a lower wing loading on the sticks than you would anticipate from just the actual wing area itself. However, because it's up front here, what happens sometimes is as the plane accelerates or gets to top speed, is it'll want to what we call zoom or climb away on its own. So the way we've solved that is I just use, these are just little, I think number 4 or number 6 washers. Just buy a box of them at Home Depot for dirt cheap. They're about a millimeter or 1.1 millimeters thick. And then all I do is, it might be tough for you to see here, but all I do is I've just got them in between the wooden motor mount and the metal motor mount here, just on these top screws. So what it does is it actually angles the motor down a little bit. So normally if this motor was was completely square without those two washers, this bullet nut would be pointing sort of right at the very center of this back plate. So because I've shimmed it down a little bit, the bullet nut is essentially pointing at the bottom of the foam here, maybe it's a little slightly lower. So that's what we suggest you start off with. Fly it around, you know, and then if you feel you need to shim it down a little bit more, just do it in very, very tiny increments, because if you get it shimmed down too far, the opposite could happen. You go to accelerate and the plane will actually want to dive. What we're trying to avoid here is continually moving the battery too far forward to compensate for the zooming, and then you end up flying nose heavy, which then negatively affects the rest of this flight envelope. So it's a very easy adjustment, but it's in the build instructions, more explanation on that. So that's a unique feature of our plane. Okay, so covered quite a bit. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to fire it up here and show you the throws. Make sure we've got that sorted out so it doesn't beep like crazy. Okay, so in the pitch, in the elevons, I've got about an inch of travel one way. We just measure it with a ruler. In the build instructions there's pictures. We just find it's easier to do it with a ruler than try and give you, you know, degrees of deflection, because everybody should have a ruler. You just kind of hold it there, see how far the surface travels, as well as, you know, my transmitter is probably different than yours, so if we listed, oh, start your elevons off at 65%, well, my 65% could be completely different than yours. So 1 inch in the pitch, about 3/4 of an inch one way in the roll. If you're flying elevons only, we recommend you double that, so it would be 1.5 inches in the roll on the elevons if you're going elevons only. With the ailerons, about 3/8 of an inch of travel in the ailerons, and about 1/2 inch of travel in the rudders. So we recommend that as a good starting point. We want to set you up as much as possible for success on your maiden flight and your first few flights. You know, allow you to get the airplane airborne, get it trimmed in, start to you know, figure out exactly where your battery and everything else needs to be to get you balanced on your on the CG properly, and then, you know, you can start dialing it in for how you want your plane to fly from there. So we've tried our best to err a little bit on the side of caution. Again, you may actually want to go down from what we have, but we feel pretty safe in recommending the throws that we have. I actually like to fly mine, although this is set up, this is kind of the demo plane, this is set up with all the throws exactly the way we recommend, you know, with our least, our mild power setup, if you want, just to sort of prove what you can do with this plane with a pretty simple power setup. Normally on my other plane, I probably actually have increased my roll throws by maybe about 5 to 10%, but again, it'll be whatever you like to do. So I'm just going to unplug that, shut this off. So I just want to demonstrate, we, just so that everybody, that you're in the same, on the same sheet of music with us, we always, when we're checking our CG, we always flip the plane upside down, and then, you know, kind of do your best to balance it on your thumbs or your fingers. So I'm pretty much bang on neutral balance there, obviously making sure that, you know, the tails of the plane aren't touching your shoulder or anything. So that's how we do it. We don't do it this way, or, you know, I know there's many different ways that people like to evaluate their CG, but just to make sure you have the best success possible, this is how we check our CG. So I always try and do it, you know, at home before I go to the field before my maiden flight, because there's no wind blowing your plane around. So that's how you want to check your CG before your first flight. Yeah, I think that's about it. Everything else, like I said, is covered in far more detail in our build instructions. I recommend that you go have a look at those. Please don't be intimidated by them. They're very long. I think they're 57 pages long, but there's close to 100 pictures in there, so tons and tons of pictures. It doesn't take that long to read through and browse through them. So you know, I recommend that you, especially if you've bought the plans, I recommend that you go, you know, take the time, sit down with your favorite beverage and maybe a snack and just kind of go through them, because we've tried to lay the instructions out in a way that makes it very logical. So by reading all the way through it, then hopefully you know, you're not going to get too far ahead of yourself in one stage as you start building, which may affect something later on. And again, if you're just considering building this plane, hopefully by watching this video and reading the build instructions, you'll be able to make a very educated decision as to whether this is the plane for you. Performance-wise, this is probably, compared to our MiG-35B, which up until this point has definitely been the best plane that we've produced. With actually less throws, this is probably about 10%, maybe 15% more responsive. I'm really super impressed every time I fly it on how great the balance is, how responsive it is on the sticks. You know, it really, with the design that Stephane came up with and the tweaking and fine-tuning that we did with motor location, servo location, all those kinds of little scientific details, I think we've also really been able to emulate you know, true Su-27 scale flying performance as well. It's definitely faster than the MiG-35B, maybe 5 to 10% faster, so for the speed demons out there, that's good news as well. It's a pretty speedy little beast. So anyway, thanks very much for watching. Again, if you've purchased the plans, you know, on behalf of Stephane and Dave, my NAMC partners, we thank you very much for that. And if you're considering the plane, again, please go ahead, read all the information possible. There'll also be a link to my email down below, scott@migsorus.com, if you have any other further questions. We appreciate your interest, and thank you very much for watching. We wish you all blue skies and calm winds, park jet noise, the other sound of freedom, baby. Take care, everyone.